Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. Today we have a really fun episode. It is the first episode in a new side series that I'm starting that is all related to the company Tavour, T-A-V-O-U-R. If you are not familiar with Tavour, Tavour is a company that I use their app. I'm sure they probably have a website as well, but they get you access to really good, hard to get craft beer from all around the country and indeed the world, as we will see today. This is my very first crate, arrived yesterday, and I've got a bunch of Tavour reviews from beers that I got through the app. Kind of the shtick is they let you get your hands on beers that honestly are so challenging to get a hold of. Even people that live right in the area where it's brewed, it sells out before they can get any, but they rather have an in, as it were, so you can get your hands on them too. Now, some of them do sell out a lot quicker than others, and you'll see, and they release new beers daily, and you can kind of track them, and they tell you about the brewer, kind of give you ratings from other Tavour users, other people in the craft beer industry, what their ratings are, and tell you a bit about it. So really interesting concept. Obviously supports small local craft brewers from all around the world, and certainly we are diehard advocates of craft beer here, and anything that is going to support the continued success and health of another craft beer brewery, we're all for it. So today's inaugural Tavour review series, we have 3 beers, all of which I have never had, and I'm really excited. These are all Imperial Stouts today. We're going to be starting with the Victory Art Brewing Company. They are a Russian brewer. These are really hard to get in the US. The first one, this is Ivan. It's a proper Russian Imperial Stout, clocks in at 13% ABV. The second beer is from Hubbard's Cave. They're a brewery out of Illinois. I think it's a town that's not too far outside of Chicago. This one is the Chocolate and Cinnamon Pot de Crème. This is, again, an Imperial Stout. This one clocks in at 11.5% ABV. And then the final beer is from a brewery called Põhjala. It's an Estonian brewery, as in the Baltic country, Estonia. This beer is the Cherry Bänger. This is also an Imperial Stout, 12.5% ABV on this one. So really excited to get this new series started. Tavour, my first shipment, but just in the weeks that I was doing it and setting up my first order, kind of the shtick as well, you get a few weeks span and they give you a window, and as much beer as you order in that window, they ship it all to you at once in one shipment for the same flat rate. You can speed up the date of delivery, but I kind of like having an open window so I can get a delivery with 20, 30 different beers in it. So it's really, really awesome so far what I've experienced. And it's going to be part of an ongoing series just to give you an idea of the types of amazing beers you can get in different areas of the country and the world, and see just exactly what you can get your hands on through Tavour. So far, I'm a fan. As we progress, I will give you continued updates, and this is going to be a fun little series. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in and start with the Victory Art Brewing Company's Ivan Russian Imperial Stout. All right, so we're kicking off things with the highest ABV of the bunch, the Victory Art Brewing Ivan Russian Imperial Stout, 13% ABV. I'm going to hold up the bottle. It's got some really neat bottle art on there. I'm hoping that the camera can properly focus on that, but really neat looking, and it's got some Cyrillic script on here. That's the script in which Russian is written, which sadly I can neither read nor write, but it's really nice looking. It's very cool bottle art. And to get my hands on Russian Imperial Stout that's actually Russian, I'm really excited about this. This is not a beer you can just find every day most places. So let's get this poured. Really dark, really, really thick, as you would expect from an Imperial Russian Stout. That's 13%. It is super, super thick. You cannot see through that at all. It is black as the night. Formed a nice head on here. Rather creamier looking head, which you don't always get from a bottle even with a stout, but it's lovely looking thus far. I'm excited what about to behold. Let's give it a sniff. Yeah, that smells like a huge Imperial Stout right there. That smells a mix of rich and sweet and just a hint of boozy back, which you'd expect with a 13% ABV. Smells dense and chocolatey. Doesn't smell like coffee like you get with a lot of big rich stouts, but we'll see just what the quality of the roasted malts that they used imparts in here. So let's jump right in. Give it a sip. It smells great, looks great, head formed nicely. Oh, that is decadent. Oh, that is so rich. Oh, oh, that's actually got a flavor, and it's got a stupid long finish. The initial reaction is really rich, really roasted malts. It opens to this slight hint of cherries, like chocolate covered cherries. You get not the sense that there's coffee in there, but that the malts have been roasted so heavily that it imparts an almost peaty, kind of Scotch wee heavy smokiness to it, or like a French roast coffee bean. It's very rich, it's very dense, it's very decadent. The body is just heavy as can be. The mouthfeel is silky smooth. And it's very viscous. It really, really lingers around the palate, and you get just this nice pungent kick of bitters. It is one of the more bitter Imperial Stouts I've ever had, and for me, as a hop head, I love the bittering of hops as much as any other element of the hop. This is nice. So often you get a big, rich Imperial Stout, and it's overly sweet, or they add lactose in it, or it's a milk Imperial, or, you know, they do something to it to sweeten it up. And you often get that just by the higher content of fermentables. But this has a nice, earthy, roasty, rich, bitter edge to it. It's as close to super strong black coffee as you can get in beer form for my money. This is really fantastic. I'm loving this. I'm absolutely loving this, and I am so glad that I got the opportunity to get my hands on it via Tavour. So I will finish enjoying this over quite some time. This is a beer meant to be enjoyed over a long period with such a high ABV, and it's so rich. And then, as always, we'll come back and get the rating at the end. But while I enjoy this, we'll cut and we'll come back and see what the Hubbard's Cave chocolate and cinnamon pot de crème has in store for us. Okay, moving on to our second beer on this Tavour procured Imperial Stout beer review. The second one comes from Hubbard's Cave Brewing. They are based out of Illinois. I believe in Niles is the name of the city. This is their chocolate and cinnamon pot de crème. It's an 11.5% ABV Imperial Stout. You can see it's a very basic, very kind of plain Jane looking can, but I have a sneaky suspicion that that is going to belie something quite special here inside this can. So gonna get cracked. I can already see it looks quite dark there in the can. Oh, that is so thick. Oh, that is just thick as motor oil. Let it glug. Got some splashback on my fingers here. Okay. All right. Another one that is just as black as night. You cannot see through this beer, even holding it up to my set lights. I absolutely cannot see through this. Got a really nice head on here. It formed like a classic stout head. It's really ridiculously fine. Looks very creamy. Bubbles in the head there that are slowly burbling away. Let's give this a sniff. Okay, it is not the most pronounced aroma in the world, but you can smell it, and it smells very rich, and it does smell chocolatey, and you can just pick up just a hint of the cinnamon in the back. But the chocolate is the overwhelming kind of aroma that comes through on this one. You can also get a real sense of how deeply roasted these malts that they chose for this beer are. It smells like it's going to be really rich and probably quite heavy, which I'm rather looking forward to, I'm not going to lie. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Get the beer out of my mustache there. Oh my God. Okay. Oh, man. Oh. Wow. To say that that's delicious is a massive, massive understatement. That's incredible beer. That's incredible beer. This is exactly as advertised. Chocolate and cinnamon Pot de Crème Imperial Stout. The name tells you everything you need to know about this beer. It is just chocolate and cinnamon in droves, by the fistful. Most beers that have cinnamon in it, it gets drowned out. This is exceptionally cinnamon forward, though it's not overpowering in my opinion. No, it's a beautiful balance. It's a beautiful balance in here. And that cinnamon really gets to sing. That's so rare in a beer. You can taste the chocolate. It's thick, rich, almost like semi-sweet chocolate, or like cocoa, like hot cocoa that's had cinnamon in it, and then turn that into an Imperial Stout. That's what this reminds me of. And Pot de Crème, it is creamy, and it's rich, and it's thick, and it's viscous, and the body is just so beautiful, and the mouthfeel is silky smooth, and the finish is just stupidly long. I am loving everything about this beer. I absolutely am loving everything about this beer. This is so good. This is one of those that is on the sweeter side. It's not bitter at all. It's not hoppy. It doesn't really have a bitter kick at all. It's a heavy, dense, rich, this is dessert beer. This is decadent, decadent dessert beer. Picture this. You just finished a 1.5 pound, perfectly cooked, mid-rare Chateaubriand, and you want to treat yourself to, say, some Bananas Foster for dessert, and you want a beer to pair with it after the end of just a truly fabulous, decadent meal. This would be one to go for. Ah, God, this is such good beer. Another one that, honestly, I wish that you could taste this. I know I can't do much more than explain to you what I'm experiencing through the camera lens, but have mercy. This is delicious beer. It is absolutely delicious beer. It's exactly as advertised. They nailed it. Chocolate and cinnamon Pot de Crème Imperial Stout. That is exactly what this is, and it is heavenly. I love this. We'll come back to get the full rating in all categories at the end, but for now I'm going to finish enjoying this. It's another big ABV beer, so it's going to take me a hot minute to finish this, but we'll come back and move on to our final beer, the Põhjala Cherry Bänger, the Estonian Brewers Imperial Stout. Okay, so for the final beer in our first of our, what will be an ongoing series of beers you can get through Tavour, the craft beer supplier for craft beer enthusiasts. Most certainly, this final beer is from a brewer called Põhjala. Põhjala. They are an Estonian brewer, and certainly this will be the first Estonian beer that I've ever had. This one is called Cherry Bänger. Again, it's another Imperial Stout. It's brewed with chocolate, cherries, and vanilla. So I expect this is going to be very rich, very decadent, possibly sweeter on the dessert beer side of things, but we're going to find out. So let's go ahead and get this poured in the glass. This one is the second highest ABV of the bunch at 12.5%. Oh yeah, that's really, really, really thick. Really, really, really thick again. Not the biggest head in the world, but again, you get these bigger, thicker, dark stouts. If they're not on a tap with forced carbonation, they tend to not get the biggest heads just because they're so thick, so there's less effervescence in there, and it does typically form tighter, so it's just got a little head on there. Yet another one that is just as black as the night. Cannot see through this at all. Looks great. Let's give it a sniff. That has a very, very strong aroma. You can smell everything that they claim that is in there. The chocolate cherries and the vanilla, almost in equal parts. It smells delicious. It smells boozy and it smells a little sweet. So the nose is really pronounced and kind of gets you really excited about jumping in there. Everything about what they're saying they put into this beer really gets me excited. This puts me in mind of our Unibrew review I did, part 2, the Ale Gâteau Forêt Noir. That was like a German chocolate cherry cake. I expect this may have a similar quality. About to find out. So without further ado, let's jump in and give it a sip. Oh, it's everything I hoped it'd be and then some. God above. Okay, that is just, my words are fleeting. It's so good, it's taking my breath away. That is bloody incredible beer. I mean, this is on that same level as that Unibrew that I just mentioned. God, all of these beers have been so big and intense. And this is another beer that, honestly, I've never seen anything from Põhjala in my life, ever. I don't know what deal Tavour has worked out with their distributors, but that we can get our hands on this is absolutely incredible. What I do know about this brewery is that in the European beer scene, they are considered one of the big up-and-comers to keep an eye on. Certainly a top-rated brewer. And if this beer here is indicative of what they're putting out in the marketplace, I can absolutely understand why. This is absolutely incredible beer. This is top-notch beer. It is rich. It is decadent. It does have a sweetness. It does have a booziness to it, but it also has this rich, earthy quality to it too, almost a more roasty edge to it. And it's got a very long finish and it's very, very layered. Overall, I would say this is an exceptionally well-balanced beer. As you might expect, it's got a very heavy body, a silky smooth mouthfeel though. Let's take another sip and really think on all of these parts that are interplaying. Cherries and vanilla very heavily up front. Chocolate comes in the back. I think that's where the earthy and roastiness comes from. Probably aged with dark cocoa nibs. Clearly they have really deeply roasted malts in here, which gives this nice kind of, it's not coffee, but it's that similar quality that you get with the deep roasted something. It gets that earth and that almost smoky quality to it in the back. And it is sweet up front. This is a beer I would absolutely consider an appropriate dessert beer. But it's got that rich, earthy, smoky edge to it in the back. And particularly on the finish, kind of balances it out very, very nicely. This is absolutely top-notch beer. I'm going to see if I can find any means to get any additional beers that Põhjala is putting out, because this is absolutely incredible, this cherry banger. We'll come through at the end and get the final ratings on all three, but for now I'm going to take my time and enjoy this beer over an extended period of time as it was meant to be. Okay, so now that we have gotten to thoroughly enjoy all three of these absolutely fantastic beers, we're going to go through and give it our rating. Um, First thing I'd like to say before we get there is that as the first installment of my side series with beers you can get through the company Tavour, if these three beers are indicative of the type of offerings that you're able to get, wow. I absolutely highly recommend, because all three of these are exceptional beers. I mean, these are world-class beers right here. Make no mistake about that. So definitely worth looking into Tavour. I got it in app form through the Apple App Store, and it's worth looking up in my opinion. I have many more episodes coming behind of Tavour. I got a lot of beers in my first case I had delivered, so the next several episodes will be continuing this ongoing series. And as I get new releases that I get through there, I'll keep reviewing them for you, just to let you know what's out there and means of how you can possibly get your hands on it. Without further ado, though, let's go ahead and move on. Starting with the Victory Art, this was the Russian Imperial Stout Ivan, 13% on this one. This is an actual Russian-based brewer, so a true Russian Imperial Stout. The aroma, perfect 10 out of 10. It couldn't possibly have been rated lower. 10 out of 10. Taste, same as the aroma, 10 out of 10. Just blew me away. All of these beers did, and you'll see the rankings are representative. The body, still well above average on this one. I would expect a little bit more body on Russian Imperial Stout, but it was still well above average, 8 out of 10 there. Same thing for the mouthfeel. Again, well above average, 8 out of 10. The finish, I gave it a 9. It was almost perfection. It was long and layered and complex. This was a really interesting beer, had a lot of layers to it, and it was just a pleasure to experience. There's not much else I can say about it. The head and the retention was very good, well above average. I think it probably would have been higher if you could get this beer on a tap, but coming from a bottle as thick as it is, it's still got a pretty good head, so 8 out of 10 there. For the appearance, another perfect 10 out of 10. It was just black as the night. That's exactly what you want to see in this style. Couldn't dock at any points. The balance, I gave it a 9 out of 10. It was so well balanced. It was near perfection in that regard. And like I said, and related to the finish and the balance, it was very multifaceted and multi-layered, and it was kind of a surprising beer for me. So often with Imperial Stouts, they'll be overtly boozy, or they'll be a little sweet, and there was a bit of that, but this beer had a nice roasty, smoky, peaty earthiness in the back, and it had some bitters to it. So it was kind of an interesting Imperial Stout in that regard. I really enjoyed it. 9 out of 10 for the balance. The feeling in the intangibles, I absolutely loved it. I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. Then finally, as an example of the style, I too gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. That brings the grand score on this one up to a 92 out of 100, which is a ridiculously high score. This is world-class beer right here. I highly recommend it if you can get your hands on it. Moving on to number 2, the American brewer of the bunch, Hubbard's Cave out of Illinois. This was the Chocolate and Cinnamon Pot de Crème, also an Imperial Stout, 11.5% ABV. The aroma on this one was fantastic. You knew it was going to be special just by the smell. I gave that an 8 out of 10. The taste, I loved it. I might say it bordered a little bit sweet for my liking, but given that it's chocolate and cinnamon pot de crème, I didn't think that it was out of place. Still loved it, 9 out of 10. The body and the mouthfeel both very closely interrelated. They're not always the same, but I gave both of them a 9 out of 10. It was near perfection. The finish, I also gave it a 9 out of 10. Again, near perfection. It was so layered, and the finish was so long and lets you taste all of the chocolate, all of the cinnamon, and all of the creaminess that was in this beer. I really enjoyed this one. This was one I would term a perfect dessert beer. And that's exactly the impression that I got. This would be a great dessert beer. You get done with a nice, heavy, hearty meal, maybe a nice big old Chateaubriand or something like that, and you want to treat yourself maybe to a beer to finish off the meal or pair with, say, a nice slice of cheesecake. This would go beautifully. Head and retention on this one, I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. Couldn't have asked for better. It was absolutely perfect in that category. The appearance, just like the Ivan, perfect 10 out of 10. It was black as night, couldn't see through it, and that's what you expect from a rich, thick, heavy, dense Imperial Stout. That's what I'm looking for. A balance on this one, 9 out of 10. Very, very well balanced. All of the flavors you could taste independently of one another, and it was very evenly distributed throughout the flavor profile. So 9 out of 10, very high score. The feeling and the intangible, I gave it a 10 out of 10. I loved it. I'm not normally the biggest fan of sweet beers, and what I term dessert style beers, they're not something I normally go for. But if they're done well, and it's all in balance, and it's got good substance to it, they are enjoyable. You know, it's not a type of beer I go for every day. They tend to be a bit heavier, and the added sweetness you get tends to be make the heaviness of the beer in and of itself just even heavier still for me personally. But I still gave it a 10 out of 10 and well deserved. Finally, as an example of the style, I gave it a 9 out of 10. This is a fantastic beer. If you can get your hands on this one, I do recommend it. And I do know that Hubbard's Cave has a lot of different flavors of their pot de creme kind of beers that they put out. Chocolate and cinnamon really rang well with me, so I grabbed it. I would be very interested to try some of their other pot de creme offerings. Fantastic beer. Total score on this one, the same as the Ivan, 92 out of 100. Another top tier world-class beer. That brings us to our final beer, the beer out of Estonia. This is the Põhjala, challenging word to pronounce, Põhjala. This was the Cherry Bänger Imperial Stout. It was brewed with cherries, chocolate, and vanilla, and this was fantastic. I thought that this might be a sweeter beer akin to the Hubbard's Cave, but it was not overtly so at all. This one I thought was very well balanced indeed, and I really enjoyed this. And boy, if the beers that Põhjala is brewing are all of this caliber, I wish I could get my hands on more beer. And if this is indicative of the Estonia beer scene, those in Europe that are close enough to grab it with more regularity are some lucky beer enthusiasts. Anyway, starting with the aroma, I gave it a 9 out of 10. You knew it was going to be special as soon as you smelled it. You could smell everything that they said went into it. The cherries, the chocolate, and the vanilla, and the depth of the grain bill that went into making this beer. Fantastic aroma. I loved it. 9 out of 10. Taste, I gave it the same thing, almost perfection. 9 out of 10. The body, I also gave that a 9 out of 10. It was very heavy. It was very viscous. It really had some depth to it, and it had some weight to it. You could really feel it, and 9 out of 10 I had to give it that score. It's well deserving. The mouthfeel, I only docked 1 point compared to the body. I would have liked a little more viscosity, but it was still well above average, 8 out of 10 there. The finish, 9 out of 10 again. This was almost perfection. The finish was so long and multifaceted, and this was just a classic story of layer upon layer upon layer, and letting you pick them out individually as you experience the beer from the, first getting that aroma and first getting it in your mouth and swishing it around and letting it just tail off and think on what it is you're experiencing. This was just another top tier example of what a great beer finish should be. 9 out of 10. The head and the retention, I docked 1 point. Again, I still think if you could get these on a nitro tap, that the head would form a lot more appropriately. But we're talking from the bottle, no forced induction here, no forced carbonation, and it's just going a very thick, viscous beer into a glass. So the heads are going to form how they're going to form, but I still gave it an 8 out of 10, well above average. The appearance, just like the prior two, perfect 10 out of 10. Again, another beer that is black as night. That's what you want to see with an Imperial Stout. I don't even want to even hint to think that I could see through it. Yeah, perfect 10 out of 10 for this one. The balance, 9 out of 10. Ridiculously well-balanced beer, like all of the rest of these. And balance and finish do often go hand in hand, because if the finish is up to the layer, up to the level where you get to pick out all the independent layers, particularly if it has a nice length to the finish, that normally is going to mean that the beer is well balanced, that all of the parts that are interplaying that go into making this beer what it is are singing in harmony. They're not overpowering one another, and indeed that was true here. I gave it a 9 out of 10. To round up the final two categories, the feeling and the intangible, and the example of the style, I gave it a 10 out of 10 for the feeling and intangible. Well deserved. I absolutely loved it. And same thing for the example of the style. I gave it a 10 out of 10. All of these beers, unbelievable. Final score on the Põhjala Cherry Bänger is a 91. So only 1 point apart for the score distribution amongst all three of these beers. Anything that's a 90 and above is, for my money, what I consider to be a world-class beer. It is not easy to get that high of scores in all the varying categories to bring it into the 90s and higher. These are all absolutely well worth seeking if you can find a means of getting your hand on them. As a first test and first sampling of beers in the Tavour series, I have to say I am feeling like a lucky man to finally have learned about the app and gotten in with them, because if this is any indication of what the rest of the beers that I've gotten have in store for me, I'm going to be a happy, happy man. A happy, happy man indeed. These are world-class beers that you can't just get anywhere. And through Tavour, you have the opportunity to get your hands on them and to enjoy them. And enjoy them, I absolutely did. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. As always, I do appreciate you tuning in. Like and subscribe if you want to keep in the loop and get it in your feed for when we drop our new videos. You can click the bell icon and that'll alert you as soon as our videos get published and go live. We're going to be bringing you more beers from Tavour. I'm really excited to see what the next several reviews have in store. They're all based from Tavour, and I will mention this in all of the videos of our Tavour series. And once I get the time, I will set up a separate Tavour subfolder on my page. So if you're just interested in seeing the reviews that come from the Tavour app, I will have them all nested there independently of all the other beer reviews. But as always, we thank you. We'll see you very soon on the next one. Until then, keep it beer, keep it craft. Cheers.